Good evening, everyone. Welcome back. Today is September 21st. Happy fall. And welcome to Veterans Voices, a monthly talk show focusing on your issues, veterans issues. I'm your host, Nathan Johnson, and I'm joined again by my co-host, Kevin Graves. He's back from a very long trip in Iraq. We'll talk about that shortly. And he was absent from our VetCon episode last month during that trip. It was a humanitarian mission he was there for. So we're pleased to have you back again tonight, Kevin. Welcome.
Thank you, Nathan. Tonight's episode will focus on the issue of homelessness amongst the veteran population and provide not only valuable insight into the topic, but also give examples as to what some of our local service providers are doing to make an impact in their communities. Stay with us tonight as we discuss how you at home can also make an impact on the more than 300,000 U.S. veterans that are living on the streets or sleeping in shelters on any given night.
That's a big number, Kevin. Before we begin our discussion on homelessness, though, we want to take a moment to discuss Kevin's recent trip to Kurdistan, Iraq, where he worked alongside others in a humanitarian effort to aid refugees who have become displaced from the expansion of ISIS. You may have heard about this recently in the news. It's a big issue now that a lot of folks are talking about. But in this instance, a video production crew back in August went out to follow these aid workers through Iraq to capture and document the stories of these displaced refugees who in fact are homeless themselves. We now bring you the trailer for The Longest Road.
If I think about it too much, it comes back.
Oppress a people forever and think they're just going to lie down and take it.
We Americans were watching on the news this mass exodus of these ethnic minorities.
And then we're talking about astronomical numbers, 1.5 to 2 million refugees.
Many of these people are doctors and lawyers and electricians and engineers and professional people. What is their future going to look like?
I'll never forget the looks in their eyes. This one lady was saying, "Don't film us if you're not going to do anything about it."
We have a great many of humanitarian groups, non-governmental organizations, who are trying to do the right thing.
My name is Richard Campos, 63 years old. I was deployed in 2003. We were part of the invasion force. I saw on the news atrocities that ISIS was doing in Iraq. I just knew I had to go back.
This gentleman travels back and forth to Kurdistan, trying to bring whatever humanitarian supplies he can.
You know, Richard's been doing this. This is not his first trip.
We lost almost 4,500 brave men and women. I think about that a lot.
For whatever reason, we left it open-ended where it became like the Wild West.
People all over the world, we have this sense of, all right, there's a problem, let's go fix it.
This is a need, and we will regret it if we don't come to the aid of these people.
We may not change their situation overnight, but if we don't start somewhere, then we'll never get anywhere.
Our main purpose in life is to help others. And if you can't, don't hurt. I kind of live by that. I just try to do better.
The Longest Road. It looks like it'll be a very moving and eye-opening film. Thanks, Kevin. But I'm hoping maybe you can give us a little bit more of an understanding, more of a first perspective, first account of what your experience was like over there in Kurdistan, Iraq.
Absolutely. The primary mission for the trip was humanitarian. I went over there with a group of the film group that had been over there in March previous, and that's when the first trailer was made. And they went to film more of the service providers that were over there so they could find out what was working and what wasn't working and what the needs of these displaced people were. Literally millions of displaced people we were able to see. We saw children, we saw mothers, we saw fathers, grandparents. Most of them didn't have a lot of hope, unfortunately.
Now, so we're just learning about this in the news. It's been talked about for a while, but it's really kind of hit the headlines. So How long has this been going on for? How long have these refugees been displaced from their home country?
Well, it all depends on when ISIS takes over that territory. What happens is ISIS will go into a home. In fact, we were in a city of 12,000 people where ISIS went in, literally killed a couple of the leaders of the city, and then told everybody else they had to leave or they would kill them also. And they just forced them out of their cities. And these are people like you and I. These are doctors, lawyers, mechanics, carpenters. These aren't people that are wandering the desert. These are people with lives, with families, with careers, with money in the bank. And on top of that, I had a personal mission that I was going over there for. As we've talked about before on the show, my son Joey was killed over in Iraq in 2006. By going over there with this group, I was able to get within about 150 miles from where Joey was killed. And it was very meaningful for me. We were able to get into a combat zone. We were able to get close to ISIS. And as I fulfilled that personal mission, it's all of a sudden the secondary mission became my primary mission. And all of a sudden I saw that when Joey went over there, he went to liberate a people that were suffering at the hands of a tyrant.
Right.
And I figured that I was continuing Joey's mission. I was now going to go over to serve some of these same people and be able to tell their story so that the world would be more aware of the help and the needs that they have over there. It's just absolutely amazing. And the Kurdish people are amazing people, extremely hospitable. You spend a couple hours with Kurds and you absolutely fall in love with them.
I remember that a little bit from my own experience over there in Iraq and just how displaced people were in general. Of course, being that it was the invasion, it was a time of war, and so people were fleeing from their homes with everything that they owned. And so your son was there, Joey was there as a part of that mission, and so that's the closest you've ever been to where he was killed. You were within hours.
I never really thought I would ever have that opportunity to actually spend time, to be able to visit the country, because Iraq isn't exactly a tourist hotspot.
Right.
They don't have a tourist bureau. It's not places people desire to go.
No.
But I had this opportunity to do this, and then I also had the opportunity to continue Joey's mission. But one other thing I did when I was over there, in dealing with a lot of Gold Star families here in the area, a couple of them had specifically asked me, because they knew that I would be standing on the soil where Joey and their heroes shed their blood. Now, granted, it wasn't the exact corner, it wasn't the exact building, but I'm standing on the same soil where our kids gave their lives and their blood flowed into the sand.
And many of you maybe watched our July episode in which we talked with many Gold Star families, wives, mothers, fathers, who had experienced the same thing that you experienced back in 2006. So when you went there to Iraq, although you were going there for yourself and going there for the refugees, were there many families, Gold Star families, that were connected to that experience with you?
As I posted on Facebook on my trip there, and actually when some that knew that I was going, actually asked me to do them a favor. And they had asked me if I would bring back some of the dirt and some of the sand from Iraq, so they could also have some of that soil from where our kids shed their blood. And actually, a veteran buddy of mine who had actually served in Iraq asked me to do the same thing, and that would be you, Nathan.
Wow,
I remember you and I had this discussion.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I wanted to present you with a small vial of dirt that I brought back from Iraq, and I know that was important to you. We talked about it before I went, and I wanted to make sure that you got some of that soil that you went over and you fought for, and other veterans have. And I just wanted to make sure I got that to you. I have presented it to some Gold Star families, and it's been a tremendously emotional experience for them, and I hopefully believe it's healing for them, as healing as it was for me to actually be there.
Well, thank you. I remember little Tabasco bottles about this size, maybe even a little bit smaller, were what a lot of service members over in Iraq were filling up the Tabasco bottles with dirt. And I can tell right away that this is Iraq dirt. It's very dirty dirt. It's distinct. But you know what? This dirt is very significant, I think, for Gold Star families. It's the soil that their loved one's blood was shed on. For many of us who served in the military and served in places overseas, the dirt represents the commitment that we made, the time and the effort that we put into those countries, whether they be during war or during peacetime. Really, if you stood on that soil guarding that country, that soil is very sacred. So thank you. What a great way to present that.
Well, I appreciate it. I thank you for all you do for our veterans also. But and in that same vein, this is still going on over there. It's no longer Saddam Hussein. Now it's Daesh. Now it's ISIS that is causing these same displacements. And it's almost even worse from the standpoint that they don't want to just take over towns. They want to demolish their heritage. They're demolishing artifacts and heritage and things that go back thousands of years. That dirt came from the plains of Nineveh. Nineveh is where the Old Testament was written. I mean, that's the cradle of civilization. That's the same plains that Alexander the Great fought on.
Right.
Tremendous history over there.
That's right. Our audience is getting to enjoy some pictures of you over in Iraq. And I remember when you were there, you would send some pictures, and many of the pictures really showed the refugees.
This is a camp over there that about 150,000 people live in tents. They get about, if they're lucky, they get about $600 every 2 months to live on. This was a kindergarten class that we got to spend time in. You can see that their walls consist of blue tarps. Their roof is like a thatched roof, and it's 130 degrees in there, and they're sitting on AstroTurf. But yet the kids still have hope. The kids still play. It was a very meaningful experience. Unfortunately, when you talk to the parents or the grandparents, they seem hopeless. This was a family that was living in an abandoned home that I had taken some pictures of, and the little guy there got a hold of my camera, and he was just looking through the pictures. So they're not foreign. They understand technology. They came from a real world, but yet now they have no place to live.
So you mentioned hope, and you show pictures of smiling kids, and they're kind of moving along. They're going to school, whether it be a tent. Tell us a little bit about the experiences. Tonight we're talking about people are homeless. Tell us a little bit about the adults, and what is it like for them?
Well, and that's where the hopelessness comes in, because they don't know if they're ever going to get back to their homes. This family that you're seeing currently, that's where they cook. They cook outside on wood that they can gather. That's an abandoned house that they live in. There it is right there. There's no electricity, there's no water, and yet that's their shelter. That's the abandoned house in which they live at this time. It's really unfortunate, and it's very sad that these people don't. This is actually a Yazidi family, but it's mostly the Christians that are being persecuted over there right now.
How did you help them? So we're kind of seeing the poorness of it, and we're feeling the emotion, but you went there to help them. What's the effective ways of helping them?
We can help them by being aware of the situation. We can put pressure on our own government, and we can put pressure on world organizations that aren't sending the care to the Kurdish government that they should be, the funds and the resources. It's not really getting to the Kurdish government, who are the only ones that are really, the Peshmergas are the only ones that are really having any success at repelling ISIS. It's a real threat, and they're here in the States too.
On a macro level, you made some good suggestions. On an individual level, would you say that people like yourself and like the documentary crew, would you say that going to Iraq and helping them on a front face, on a more personal level, is a good idea? Or is there ways that people maybe who can't travel to Iraq can still be a part of the support effort?
Well, that's the whole thought process behind doing the documentary. It's a full-length documentary. We're going to be releasing it through independent film festivals.
The Longest Road.
The Longest Road.
Okay.
There's a Facebook page as well as the trailers that are on YouTube. We'll have another trailer coming out here in about another 30 days.
Okay.
We hope the film will be out sometime after the first of the year. And then we want people to see it. We want people to want to make a difference. We want people to there's organizations you can give to. Samaritan First is a huge organization that's making a difference over there. There's nonprofits that are involved. Unfortunately, the United Nations isn't really stepping up that much, though they've given a few tents, but they haven't really provided as much help as you would think that they would through all their resources.
Well, we can always do more. Tonight, the topic about homelessness will also address how we can be involved. And Kevin, thank you for the trip to Iraq and for giving to these people. Thank you for the dirt. Real quickly, I want to share with people, I'm going to have this dirt inlaid into a wooden ring. I'm going to wear this dirt on a ring around my finger. Very, very much look forward to that. This is very special to me. Thank you. And thanks, Kevin. We'd like to shift our focus now to homelessness at home and how it affects our veteran population. In fact, if you'd like to share your experience around homelessness, please give us a call tonight. We want you to engage in this conversation. This is a very important conversation, not only for us to have, but for you to have as well with us. Have you been homeless yourself? Have you helped a homeless person in need? Are you back on track? Have you received help and now you have somewhere to live? Call, email, or send us an anonymous chat. We'd love to hear you on tonight's show.
My name is Mike. I got out in '82, and we were in a deep recession back there, if you remember the days of Reaganomics. I couldn't get a job. They didn't care that I was a sergeant in the Marine Corps or what I was doing. They had no comprehension. And I lived in my car behind an oak tree behind a church. I took whatever life threw at me at that point. I didn't consider myself homeless. The lowest is when I just wanted to see what's it like to commit suicide. What is it like? But you know, what would my son, it wouldn't have been fair to my son to leave life at that moment. And finally, I woke up on a Friday morning and said, man, I gotta do something different. And I went down to the VA. I talked to the social worker, the homeless social worker. He said, well, we have interviews at 1 o'clock for people that might be accepted into the domiciliary. I stood in front of a group about 8 to 10 doctors, nurses, therapists, and each one of them asked me 1 or 2 questions. Call me back in, you've been accepted into the domiciliary program. It's a 4-month homeless program, but there's a waiting list, so you have to wait for about 30 days. And I was content with that. I knew, okay, there is light at the end of the tunnel and it's not a freight train. While I was living at the domiciliary, you know, thank God that program was there. It actually turned my life around. The caseworkers, the therapists, the doctors, the nurses, they all treated you with dignity, respect, and the most important, empathy. They understood. That's something I didn't get in like 29 years since I got out of the Marine Corps. Try to get away the weak things and build up the strengths that you have. And I capitalized on some of my strengths, and I found a job, security guard job. So I knew by the middle of June, I've been working, I've been saving some money, I found an apartment, and then I got interviewed for the HUD-VASH program. It's like Section 8 for veterans, VA, supportive housing. You know, when you leave the domiciliary, you're insecure. You're afraid of some pressures and responsibilities because you don't want to go back to your old way of life. But the HUD-VASH program was that safety net that I needed. There's resources available at the VA. And if you don't use it, shame on you. It's there, that's why it's there. And I finally woke up to that. And my motivation was my son. You know, when you look at your kid, I don't want him to end up, you know, living the way I'm living. Things gotta be better somewhere, somehow. I just had to find that way to make things better. And the VA gave me that way to make things better.
Welcome back to Veterans Voices. I hope you enjoyed that. Tonight's show is about veterans and homelessness. We're now joined by LaVonna Martin, Chief of Homeless Services for Contra Costa Behavioral Health Services, and Vietnam War veteran Robert Dews. Welcome, LaVonna and Robert.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy to be here.
Absolutely. Robert, we already shared with our audience that you're a Vietnam veteran. Tell us a little bit more about your service in the military.
Entered the military in U.S. Air Force, Vietnam, 70 through 74, and honorably discharged.
Well, thank you. Difficult time to be in the military, certainly a difficult time to enlist. Many people actually avoided that opportunity, so we're very proud of you for having served our country. Thank you.
Thank you.
And LaVonna, you shared with us earlier, you're not a veteran, but you have a family connection to a veteran. Tell us a little bit about that.
Absolutely. My father is a retired major in the United States Air Force and spent 20 plus years in the Air Force. And as a daughter of a veteran, I most certainly understand the sacrifice that not only the veterans pay, but also that the families give.
Certainly. We actually had an entire episode dedicated to the family members of our military and really kind of recognizing that they also serve as well. So thank you.
Robert, have you had an opportunity to use some of the services that were offered through the VA through your career after being in the Army? Or?
I didn't use the VA services after I initially separated from the military. I just used the services within the last 4 years, but it was very eye-opening and very rewarding because there's a lot of things out there that we just got to get out there and get a better voice so people can get them.
Absolutely.
I would say.
There's so many people that we run into in our business that don't realize that they're eligible for the benefits that are there for whatever reason. And we try to tell them all that you need to get into a county veteran service office or get into see a VSO and make sure that if you have some benefits coming, that you may take advantage of those.
In fact, we may have some people tonight who are watching the show who have not yet taken advantage of benefits available to them through the VA. And so we invite you to call in 925-313-1170. Share with us your story. And if you've had an opportunity to use VA resources, you can maybe allude a little bit on how those resources helped you. So we want to have a conversation about homelessness. It's a very real issue. We shared in the statistics earlier that the National Coalition for Homeless Veterans says that there's about 300 homeless veterans who are either living on the streets or in the shelters or through transitional housing. And I think that the homeless population is very disenfranchised, not intentionally, but just become disenfranchised because of their situation. And so I'm not homeless, and I'm very fortunate. I don't have a lot of opportunity to really learn about the population that is homeless and what they experience. And Robert, we've brought you on the show tonight. You've had an experience dealing with this a little bit yourself. Tell us a little bit about being homeless. How does someone find themselves homeless?
It happens in the blink of an eye. One instance can change, between job, family, stress, and it just happens. Jobs, we've lost everything. Our economy, things have changed. And some veterans are in a position to where they can't work and can't get someone to give them enough mental help or give them in the right direction to where they can try to put their lives back together. I was just one of the fortunate out of the millions that had that opportunity. But if we reach out and touch and our community would help some, we could have a good chance at coming back to a normal life. And it'll never be normal again, but it'll be one of substance and, purpose. But without a place to stay, your hope is really kind of down if you can't find some place to cover.
So this is an interesting point, and we talked about this a little bit, Kevin, with your piece, in that becoming homeless it's not just the population who's losing a minimum wage job. Very much the population who's homeless, they may be working professionals and they experience some type of joblessness. In some circumstances, people's jobs are lost immediately. They could show up to the job site and told, there's no longer a job for you here, go home. And if they don't have a plan in place or if there's nothing there to help them, they can immediately become homeless. So we could actually have a population that's displaced that are in fact are similar to refugees in Syria, who if without that job, without that ability to sustain their living, find themselves homeless.
But Lavana, you were telling me about some exciting things that are going on here within the county and how you're looking at the homeless situation and how you're trying to work together with community partners. Tell us a little bit about that program that you're putting together here in Contra Costa County.
Sure. So Contra Costa has joined the Zero 2016 campaign. It's a national campaign organized by Community Solutions, but it's also in partnership with the Department of Veteran Affairs as well as HUD to really take a look at homelessness and figuring out how we can end homelessness for veterans and for chronically homeless individuals by the end of 2016.
So it's been studied a lot, and you're studying it very closely here in Contra Costa County along with the VA, and then there's a specific initiative that includes a goal. And so what, on the professional side, on the caregiver side, the resource side, what are we beginning to understand about this population that's homeless?
Well, what we know specifically about those who are those veterans who are homeless in our community, we see about 250 homeless veterans each year that are accessing our homeless services in our system of care. And what we've learned is that 40% of those homeless veterans are chronically homeless veterans, so they've been homeless for a really long time and they have a disabling condition. In addition to that, we also found that about 70% of our homeless veterans have a disabling condition, so not only perhaps a physical or a health need, but also a mental health issue and or a substance use disorder.
Many questions are immediately coming to my mind, and I don't mean to cut you off, Kevin, but you mentioned a couple things that I really want to go over, because I think the definition chronically homeless is something that we need to understand, and I'm not sure if the homeless population really categorizes themselves as homeless or chronically homeless. I think they just see themselves maybe for what their experience is. But what is the definition of chronically homeless, and why does it matter?
So the definition that is offered by HUD is that an individual is homeless for 1 year consistently,
Okay.
and or they've experienced homelessness 4 times in the last 3 years.
Okay.
With that, they also must have a disabling condition.
Okay.
So together, those things then can appropriately designate someone as chronically homeless in our community. And once you have that designation, you may also be prioritized for housing. We are moving in our system of care where we are prioritizing the most vulnerable in our community for housing first. And so by someone being chronically homeless and with the various conditions that they may have, we can quickly identify what type of housing that would best support them and their needs.
So I want to invite everyone to join us. We have experts on set tonight. We have LaVon from Contra, Costa County, and Robert, a Vietnam veteran. 925-313-1170. Now's the time to call in with your questions, share your own experiences, or any kind of comments you have on tonight's topic. Let's break this down a little bit more, okay? Because we have identified situations in which someone maybe becomes homeless for an extended period of time. They're out on the street and they're out there for a year. Or we've identified an instance in which someone becomes repeatedly homeless. They're homeless and then they're able to pull themselves out, and homeless and then pull themselves out. What's the difference there in what would lead someone to a situation in which they would find themselves out on the street for a period of a year, or find themselves in and out of homelessness repeatedly over a period of 3 years?
Sure. So I think the experience is different for everyone. There are individuals in our community who become homeless overnight. And those individuals may just need a little bit of assistance to help them on their way. And there are also individuals who become homeless gradually, who are experiencing, whether it's a mental health need or crisis, perhaps they are also perhaps they have a substance use disorder, perhaps they are at low-paying jobs, and that their rent goes up. And so those issues are all contributing factors, and those things oftentimes don't just happen overnight. But when you couple those those with a weakened social support, perhaps they don't have family or friends to lean on, then you may find yourself homeless. And those issues that led to your homelessness aren't quickly resolved.
Well, thank you. And Robert, I'm sure that maybe in your own experiences, you could help us a little bit in understanding of maybe the social system that you had, friends or family members that were able to support you, or maybe even agencies that either kept you from living on the streets for a year, or maybe helped you break that cycle of homelessness. What was available to you, Robert, either immediately or through seeking it out yourself and finding it?
Well, immediately I didn't know what to do because I had never been homeless in my life. But being that this came up, there was only one thing for me to do, is to try to find a service. And the only service that I could reach out and touch was the VA, because I needed some real down help. So they had a stand down. I went to that. And then from there, I got in touch with service organizations under the VA, the Veterans Family Service Center, Shelter Inc. All these different agencies are out here for veterans if we reach out and can go to these stand downs. There's plenty of information for us to help us. But the one thing I would say is we still need more homeless places where veterans can go. We need a place where there's a community center, to where there's 50 beds attached to this community center where we can go. So can get some direct help from someone that's in this agency that can direct us to where to go. Because homelessness is not just for veterans, it's all of us are homeless. So we gotta have something from the community also to help. You know, to get, it takes a community to raise a child, it still takes a community to help a veteran. It takes our community.
I agree with that.
Are you collaborating with partners in providing substance abuse help, mental health training, mental health care, as you try to develop these systems that work countywide?
Absolutely. So The homeless program is part of behavioral health services. So we have right there in our own division our mental health services as well as our substance abuse services in our county. But honestly, we rely really heavily on our partners out there in the community. Oftentimes what we find are that individuals aren't coming necessarily to government first. They're going to a local provider in the community, a nonprofit provider, and therefore our partnerships must be really strong with them in order to engage.
Absolutely.
Very important understanding, because that gives us as a community a direct link to become involved, to have a conversation with people who are homeless, to learn about them, and to learn how we can connect with them in providing support, in providing friendship, community. And I think that the bottom line is you don't have to be a government employee. We don't have to rely on the VA. We don't have to rely on the county to really end the issue of homelessness amongst our veteran population. As a community, we have a responsibility, and we have a medium through our local nonprofit organizations. We have great ones here in the Bay Area, and I'm really glad you mentioned that question, Kevin. So
that's what goes good, I think, if the community opens up a place or a building where veterans can go.
Right.
As we're a community together, let the community open up a place.
You mentioned
and let that.
Robert and LaVonna, I want to thank you for being on the show tonight. Honor to have you here and to have this conversation, kind of groundbreaking conversation in regards to homelessness. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, LaVonna and Robert. Before we return with our next guests, we'd like to share with you this video message on homeless mothers who are veterans.
My name is Michaela. I joined the Army at 17. When I came back from Iraq a few years ago, I became pregnant and ended up homeless. I didn't have my own place, so I stayed at my sister's. I stayed at my stepmom. I actually stayed here on this bed at my grandma's house, and I stood right here in my grandpa's spare room. But I was running out of options until I finally found this transitional house. It was for women veterans with children. Do you remember when we used to sleep on this bed together? Some of the other women there would help me watch her while I worked and went to school. And then we moved into our own place. It was through VA supportive housing. I remember our first night here. I felt like I could finally breathe. My life works now. I got help from VA, and now I'm on a mission to share these resources with other vets who face homelessness. If you're a veteran at risk of becoming homeless, call 877-424-3838.
Tonight we have with us Derek McGinnis and Tracy Cassio, and we'd like to welcome you to the set. Please tell us a little bit about what you all do with the VA.
Okay, I'll start. I'm Tracy Cassio. I've been working with the VA for 24 years. My entire career has been serving homeless veterans. What I do right now is I oversee homeless services at the VA Northern California Healthcare System, which covers a region of 17 counties.
And my name is Derek McGinnis. I'm a social worker with the VA Palo Alto Healthcare System, and I work for the Healthcare for Homeless Veterans program. I'm a grant and per diem liaison, and fundamentally doing outreach to providers supportive housing and working with our community partners for permanent housing.
And personally, I haven't worked directly with Tracy much, but Derek and I work very close together with my role with Calvet. Whenever I have an issue with somebody mostly out in the San Joaquin Valley, Derek is usually the first call I make, and typically Derek will go, "Oh yeah, I know him," because he's very much engaged with the veterans out there, and he's constantly in the community. He visits all the homeless shelters that he works with, and does a really great job. I want to compliment you that.
Thank you,
and Tracy, I haven't had the same opportunity to work with you, but I'm sure it's the same situation with your clients. That's a large territory to cover. I only cover 10 counties, so I kind of know what that's like, but 17 counties, that's huge.
Derek, you're also a Navy veteran. I want to make sure we point that out. And I'll give you just a second to introduce our third guest here on the show. I'm not sure if the cameras can see it or not, but we got a furry guest here.
Yes, this is Iron Nathan. He's my esteemed colleague. He's a great outreach tool as well as an engagement tool, and provides my veterans and myself alike great support as we move forward.
Very cool. Thanks for bringing Iron in. Of course, he's wearing your cami blouse, which is pretty neat as a service dog. So thanks for being here, Iron, and we'll look for your perspective on some issues here. And I want to invite everyone again. It's time that we're turning to the experts here. We had LaVonna and we had Robert, and we now have Derek and Tracy on the show. And now's the time for you to chat, email, even call in and join us in the conversation about homelessness. So we want to shift gears a little bit and focus a little bit closer on the veteran who's homeless and the process that they go through, or phases, or whatever we want to call it or consider it, but just the experience that a veteran has when they become homeless, and maybe even their family. Let's not leave the family out of the picture, because not every veteran who's homeless out there is a single male. They, just as the PSA that we watch, sometimes they have children. And so let's talk a little bit about this experience. We know that there's an initiative. We're aware of the programs, but what is it like when the veteran reaches your door, reaches your footstep, and you have now the responsibility of helping that veteran and helping them through that process? What do you see? What do you see in their eyes? What do you hear in their voice? You know, is there any hope?
Well, I can go ahead and start,
Yeah.
and
Please.
Derek can add on. I think, as Levana was saying earlier, every situation is very different. But some of the things that we do see with someone that's been homeless for a while, there can be a loss of hope and a great deal of frustration, and really feeling very discouraged that things aren't fitting together. I think that there's also folks that are episodically homeless or homeless for the first time and are very devastated to find themselves in that situation. I think the important thing for us to realize, I've never been homeless, but I understand that it can be a very dangerous situation. There are a lot of safety issues, and it can be very traumatic. So I think that being homeless can result in some mental health issues.
You know, thinking about it a little bit more, if they're becoming homeless for the first time, they may be displaced outside their own communities, right? They may find themselves living somewhere else in a dangerous environment, right? If they've lived somewhere in a safe community and they found that homelessness because of job loss, like we talked about before, they may have no other choice but to relocate, just like the Syrian refugees, somewhere else. And so their safety is compromised possibly in this new community. I've never really thought about that before. How do we make them feel safe again, Derek? What's done to bring them back in?
I think it begins from personal experience with engagement, that rapid triage that you suggest. Every veteran's at a different place. Every veteran's a little bit vulnerable in their own journey and their own life experience. But being able to capture, develop a true relationship with that homeless individual, to hear that fear in their voice, that concern, and sometimes despair. To embrace it, to listen to it, to validate that experience, and then offer resolution.
Okay.
And that's very important, because now you have a trusting relationship with this individual.
Okay.
So whether that resolution that's offered at that moment is what they want, or did it plant a seed for downrange when they want that resource, perhaps? Maybe they're okay where they're at right now, but now at least I have somebody that's trusting, that regularly comes around, that knows who I'm at, and maybe one day I'll reach out to that individual to offer that resources. So whether we're even able to offer direct resources right then and there, to provide that safety, that encouragement, that validation that your service means something, and because of that, with the Grateful Nation, we're going to start you out with some housing and get you moving forward with healthcare if you want it. Or if it means a long-term seed that's planted of trust, that they can come back to you later on.
And as Robert said when he was up here earlier, for many it happens in a blink of an eye.
Yes.
And they don't even consider one moment they were at home, and then whatever the circumstances occurred that they're no longer there, whether it was a breakup of a relationship, whether it was their parents just fed up or parents moved or whatever, and then all of a sudden they're staying on a friend's couch for a while, and then the wife says, hey, you know what, Mom's got to go. This is going on a little longer than it should have. And then all of a sudden it becomes, just without them even realizing it, they got no place to live.
Yeah, all the options are gone.
Yeah, just like that. And they really weren't, it wasn't that they weren't paying attention, it transitioned so quickly that they couldn't get a grasp on it.
Well, you think about that. If one of us became homeless, we've got safety nets, we've got support systems.
Yeah.
But I think over time, those would wear out, and I think that's what happens over time.
Right. And it can be difficult during economic times to really kind of be able do that on your own, right? Particularly if it's joblessness and such. It was talked about, I think, in an earlier segment in regards to disability, and I don't want to make an association that's not one that's correctly identifiable, but in the instance in which someone has a disability, I think that maybe oftentimes we look at the physical disabilities and overlook the mental health disabilities, and maybe as a perspective of the community, we see someone who's homeless and we see them as physically able, and maybe our thoughts are, get back to work. What's the problem here? Why can't you just pull it together and get back? Not seeing maybe the invisible wounds. So amongst the veteran population, what are some of the non-visible wounds that are associated? Maybe they contribute, or maybe they just occur simultaneously with our homeless veteran population.
Right. I think that, I'll start, Derek.
Please.
I think about 50% of veterans who are homeless report a mental health problem, and some of the mental health issues that we see are really the full range, where it could be depressive disorders, post-traumatic stress disorder, traumatic brain injury, which is a very hidden, and substance abuse, anxiety disorders, and adjustment disorders, and more severe disorders such as schizophrenia or bipolar disorder. So it's really the full range of mental health. And I think you're absolutely right, Nathan, in that people will make a judgment or make an assumption if they don't see an actual disability.
Thank you, Tracy. We have a caller, so we'll take the call. We have David from Antioch. David, thank you for joining us.
No problem. How y'all doing?
We're doing well. We can barely hear you. David, speak up a little bit more, please.
Hear me better now?
Perfect. Thanks, David. How can we help you?
So yeah, I was listening to you guys' show, and it's awesome that like there's all these cool programs that are going into action, people getting out there and helping homeless, getting somewhere. I got 2 points, or 1 point and 1 question. My point is, you know how in Antioch, where I'm from, they say like 5 to 15% is Section 8, and I believe that like if the homeless vets, if we could get a program to get into the same type of housing, the same kind of situation they're in, where they're getting low income, so are most of the vets at, what the most they can make is like $35,000 a year. So that's one thing I was thinking that I don't know, who would have to talk to who about that. And then my second question is this: so I'm 100% service connected from the United States Army, and I'm in between right now. All I get is my disability. So when I go to a bank to try and get a loan for a house, they're looking at me like, especially in the East Bay, there's no way you could afford this mortgage off that. But really, I can, because I'm a full-time student. I plan on working. So my question is there anything special that is offered by the VA that can help a guy like in my situation get into a home?
Well, Dave, I think your question is a very good point, in that sometimes homelessness is not an event, but it's just simply housing that's unaffordable.
Yes.
Particularly for people who are on a very limited income. David, you're 100% service connected, and that means you have a very limited income to sustain yourself. In this situation, Bay Area homes are very, very expensive. And so is there a specific program to help veterans afford homelessness? There's 2 opportunities. There's the VA Home Loan Guarantee, and then there's the CalVet Home Loan, which is the agency that Kevin works for. Now, neither of those programs guarantee the veteran an opportunity to purchase a home. So in some circumstances, the inability to purchase a home or even afford housing is still a problem that the VA can't fix. But what do we do for circumstances like David mentioned, that it would be great to have a program to help veterans with housing? What type of long-term programs, other than being able to buy a home like CalVet Home Loan, what type of long-term programs exist to help veterans sustain the housing situations?
In his circumstance or any other circumstance, what I could offer through the VA would be a grant and per diem, would be transitional housing. That would allow him to save his income and monies that he receives, whether it's employment or GI Bill or post 9/11 or service connection income.
Okay.
Hopefully with that income, he could do a deposit for a home that would bring down the value of the home, which he would then qualify for CalVet or a home loan. But he's absolutely right, is the values of the prices here in the community
either
going
buy or
up,
rent.
even for HUD-VASH, or even in the Central Valley, it is getting extremely difficult.
So transitional housing would give that person up to 2 years to, so David, you could save those assets for 2 years
Yes.
to afford a deposit, either for a purchase or even for rent. And we
That's a
talked
grant?
about, oh, David, you're still with us.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. Go ahead.
Yeah. So that's a grant that the gentleman's talking about. That would help a guy like my position get into a home.
So grant and per diem is a transitional living program where veterans can stay for up to 2 years while you're having case management and supports. So while staying at a grant and per diem program, you'd have the opportunity to save your income for deposits in your case, sir. But it's not a specific grant available
that's
to
really
you.
Cool. I'm glad that I asked. Like a closed mouth don't get fed, right?
Yeah, so we're having a tough time. I'm having a tough time hearing David. I'm sorry, our volumes have gotten a little bit quiet again, David, but I think what the opportunities exist here are going to be temporary assistance for veterans who are facing either homelessness or who are homeless or at risk of homelessness. And in some circumstances, like we're identifying, purchasing a home is unachievable in some markets.
Yeah.
And there are some programs that can help, but for some veterans with limited income, they may be faced with a grant per diem program, which the grant is to the shelter,
Yes,
to the
specifically,
program
right.
providing the housing, not to the veteran directly. Another opportunity I may throw out there, and we just have about 2 minutes, and David, thank you very much for the call. Appreciate that. But we have opportunities through HUD-VASH. Explain HUD-VASH real quickly for folks like David.
So HUD-VASH is a partnership between the VA, HUD, and local housing authorities, where a veteran gets a housing choice voucher, also known as a Section 8 voucher, and lives in the community with VA case management. It is an income-based program, though, and so in some counties, 100% service connected puts you over the HUD income limits. I'm not so sure about your region, though.
It is.
It is, yeah. So that is the challenge that David's talking about, is 100% service connected in this rental market isn't as much as it used to be.
Right.
But it's too much for some of these programs that are targeting lower income veterans.
Subsidizing then, and so that would complement then the SSVF program. So we've talked about a lot tonight. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. We can't continue this conversation. I want to thank David again. We have more time for viewers to call in with questions or comments. Please continue to call us, 925-313-1170. We have David's phone number in the control room, and certainly we'll pass it off to Tracy Cassio and Derek McGinnis, and to Iron, our experts here. Thank you tonight.
Thank you for being with us. We at Veterans Voices like to venture out into the community and capture footage of local veterans events to share with our viewers. We recently traveled to the Stand Down on the Delta event, which was held at the Contra Costa County Fairgrounds starting on September 11th of 2015. Our aim was to capture the human story behind the veteran and break the stereotypical mold that has become commonplace in society today.
Stand downs are typically 1 to 3 day events, providing services to the homeless and at-risk homeless veterans, and they provide food, shelter, clothing, health screenings, legal assistance, respite. It's just really a break from the dangerous streets that we talked about into a very safe environment. These necessary services also include housing and employment assistance to help people break the cycle and get reemployed if that's what they need. We'll now share with you the highlights from Stand Down on the Delta 2015. Here, host of Veterans Voices. We're here in Antioch, California, which is the east part of Contra Costa County, at Stand Down on the Delta, an event serving homeless veterans over the next 4 days. It's Friday, September 11th, 2015, and today we're going to walk you around Stand Down, introduce you to some of the veterans and the resources here to serve them. We're glad that you're watching, and stay tuned. I'm here with Don Droughty, a Marine Corps Iraq War veteran. Don, thank you for your service. Tell us a little bit about your experience after you shared with me earlier that you were injured in Iraq.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about your recovery from those injuries.
I'd heard other veterans talk about, or just military in general talk about the transition back home being difficult. I had no idea, to the extent of just how difficult it really ended up being. And, with my injuries, traumatic brain injury, also with post-traumatic stress, which, especially with post-traumatic stress was something that I didn't almost even believe in, so to speak. I mean, I just didn't understand how that, people could go through something like that, how it could really even happen. And I started having anxiety attacks. Things really just got very difficult for me. However difficult my journey has been, my heart goes out for the other veterans that are, have families, kids, wives, and they come back and they're not getting their benefits, for 2-3 years. I mean, how do you support a family if you're disabled? You come back with injuries, And for myself, it's affected my family. It's affected just a tremendous amount in my life, And nothing's worse than going over there. I dropped out of college to go serve my country, even began going to law school. So when I got injured, it affected all that. Couldn't go back. It was just really tough, man. And, but even then I try to keep my head up, and things are going much better now.
What have you done to help yourself get better?
Man, just, praying for one. It's, how can I put it? I'm not through it by any means yet, This type of thing, it really damages family as well. I had a falling out with my family, just, they couldn't understand what was going on. I couldn't even understand what was going on at first for a while. But, things I've been doing to get better in a sense, I've exercising, doing a lot more of that now. And, just keeping active, There's a lot of resources that are out there, and I mean, a lot.
Don, Marine Corps veteran, Iraq War veteran, thank you, Don, for your service, and thank you for allowing us to interview you today. Tell us a little bit about what this opportunity in serving homeless veterans means to you. Why did you come to Stand Down today to care for our homeless veterans?
I have family that is in the military, and active and non-active, and sometimes the veterans fall through the VA's cracks, and this was a great opportunity for me to come and give back to the vets and help the patients who have fallen through the cracks get the help that they need and deserve.
In regards to your role as a doctor and these encounters such as here at Stand Down, what are you able to do to address those unrecognized, undiagnosed, or untreated illnesses so that you can help that veteran get healthy again?
Yeah, so that's a big part of the Stand Down is we're trying to get these veterans into the system, maybe either feel more comfortable with the system or to at least plug in so that we can start to care for them in a better way.
And so lastly, to what extent do you see that service-related injuries or service-related diseases contribute towards homelessness?
Yeah, so probably the mental side plays a big role in that. For example, PTSD, if they're having a hard time coping, in the world, interacting with people, getting anxiety just from being in crowds, then they don't want to be in that environment. So if it goes untreated, then that sometimes leads to the homelessness situation. So if we can treat the PTSD, for example, then sometimes that allows them to start to integrate better into the society.
You've been out now for 12 years from the military. What has the transition out of the military been like for you?
Ooh, that's a good question. It's been fairly rough at times with the whole transitioning from the military, just becoming a civilian. I think once you get out the military as a soldier, you never really become a civilian again. However, we have to adapt to everyday life as a civilian once we get out, and it's kind of hard for us to do. I've been out now for 12 years, and I still haven't quite figured it out yet. So.
Have you ever faced challenges like being homeless?
Yes, I have actually. When I first got out, I was homeless. I tried to apply for my benefits. However, I wasn't so lucky, and I just had to kind of fend for myself. Back in 2003, there was not as many veterans programs and resources then that they have now.
But now, 12 years later, have you been able to help yourself? Have you gotten to a point in which you have become more stable in your transition? And if so, how have you helped yourself?
The Vet Center kind of helped me cope with what I was going through when I first got out. It wasn't easy, you know. But once I got there, I started meeting different people, and I got all the resources that I needed so that I can make my life a little bit better than what it was. I recently worked at EDD as a Veteran Service Navigator, so I can reach out to the veterans in the community, because a lot of them, they don't know that they need help, or they're in denial, and they actually do need help. So I started to attend vet cons and things like that, just to kind of, you know, pull in a veteran, just let them know, hey, my story is your story, you know, we're not, you know, I'm not better than you, you're not better than me, we're one, you know, and we all need each other for support. So that's why I'm here today, you know, and I just love what I do, helping veterans, you know, because like I said, I was once in their position. You can't just come back from war, come back from the Army, Navy, Air Force, National Guard, and just be a civilian and be normal again. It's not possible. We need our veteran community. We need each other so that we all can make it, because it's hard, you know? It's just really hard.
Karima, thank you. Karima is a Army veteran and is involved here at Stand Down on the Delta. I am. And thank you, Karima, for your service, and thank you for allowing us to interview today. We hope you enjoyed that. The Contra Costa Veterans Service Office will have another opportunity for you to enjoy when we raise the American flag on Wednesday, September 30th, 2015 at 3:30 p.m. right here in Martinez. The ceremony will include brief speeches followed by an open house of the Veterans Service Office, as well as this studio here, CCTV. Come sit in these chairs. Join us for this memorable occasion. The Baton Legacy Historical Society is presenting a World War II in the Philippines conference on October 24th, 10 to 4 p.m. in the San Francisco Public Library. Chief Johnny Johnson of the USS San Francisco, the most decorated carrier during World War II, and Major General Richard Keith of the 511th Parachute Infantry will be among the speakers. For further info, visit the website at batonlegacy.org. We would like to tell you about an exciting and free event for veterans called About Face. Building veterans' self-understanding through self-portraits, a series of painting workshops for veterans in October and November. Previous art experience not required, just a desire to express yourself. Register at ac5.org. Saturday, October 24th, between 10 a.m. and 2:30 p.m., 100 Elwyn Way in Pleasant Hill, a free half-day workshop with resources for struggling service members and their families at JFK University. The issue of homelessness will be addressed. Come on down. Lastly, we would like to direct you to the Veterans Service Office, which is a great overall resource for veterans and families in Contra Costa County. Go to their website or call 313-1481.
You'll find information about all the resources discussed on our show tonight on our website. You can also get the same information by calling our Veterans Service Office at the number listed on the last screen. Let us know if you found us by watching Veterans Voices. For a list of shelter and transitional housing in Contra Costa County, contact 800-799-6599. Shelter Inc. gives families a safe place to live, meeting their most basic needs while offering services such as education, employment development, and counseling. Visit them at shelterinc.org. For information on the VA Northern California healthcare system, visit the site, or if you're a veteran in need of assistance, call 1-877-4-AID-VET. Berkeley Food and Housing Project offers a variety of supportive service for veterans. Visit them at bfhp.org. Tell a friend where to find tonight's episode. We replay our shows Monday nights at 7, Wednesday nights at 11, and Saturdays at 9. You can watch all past episodes anytime on our website, contracostatv.org/Veterans Voices.
We want to thank our guests and our viewers. Thanks to the hardworking crew of CCTV. This is Veterans Voices of Contra Costa, wishing you all good evening. Thank you for serving.